These cookie cutters I purchased from Semi-Sweet Designs, and all finished, it creates a circular platter of cookies. I actually only purchased the STL files that allow us to print them on our 3D printer. Unlike my American Flamingo series that features red, white, and blue, this series I used the traditional colors of pink and green. Using this edible marker that I got with my order of Chua cookie baking mats, I marked out exactly where I needed to place my icing. I find that this is an absolute must for me. Maybe in the future I'll have enough skill to wing it, but not yet. Both the pink and green I used consist of a gel food color mix of Ann Clark Bubblegum Pink and Leaf Green, along with Chef Master Super Red added to my base white icing. Which probably sounds a little weird, but actually works out to be exactly the colors I had in my head. For the beak, I practice what is called a wet on wet technique. For this, each icing needs to be about the same consistency, or it doesn't quite work out to be as seamless an effect as I'm looking to achieve. This is a thicker flood, which takes about 20 seconds to settle on its own. I used my scribe tool here to create a mouth for this little guy by dragging my tool from the black icing to the beige. You can see here where the curve meets his neck that I didn't do a very good job of covering up my marker drawing. Also, it's best practice to stay away from the edge of the cookie with the marker to allow yourself some extra space to ensure you do cover up the marker. Believe it or not, I actually used the exact same icing to make the little wing and this top outline. All of the icing I used on the flamingos and on the monstera leaf coming up are the exact same consistency, which is referred to as a one consistency outline and flood. In the past, I've struggled to get my consistencies right, even causing me to want to throw the cookies across the room. But this time, though the consistency wasn't perfect, I think it worked out pretty well. Now I love flamingos and peacocks and roadrunners and okay, I love birds. Enough to have artwork pieces in my home and to endure ink shoved under my skin. Our pet flamingos, John and George, love to hang out in our backyard, enjoying the beautiful Southern California sun. A few years ago, after a ton of unusual rain, they even got to hang out in our swamp. If you love birds, let me know down in the comments which is your favorite. Now, back to the cookies you're here for. It is customary to make a border of icing to help hold in the heavier flood icing so that the icing doesn't fall off the cookie, which honestly still happens more than I'd like. I apologize for my hand being right in the middle of the shot here. I'm still trying to figure out the right balance of camera placement and hand positioning to make a decently decorated cookie and video. This icing was a little on the thick side, so here I tried using my scribe to settle the icing flat, which clearly wasn't working too well. So another technique is to pick up the cookie and shake it, but you have to have a good hold on it. This is what not to do. My initial reaction was to scrap this cookie. Because honestly, just like every other type A person out there, I'm pretty hard on myself to make things perfect, which, by the way, is an illusion. But then I thought, let's roll with it. Maybe it'll kind of look like feathers. If nothing else, at least it has some interesting texture to it. So after I laid down the flood layer of icing, I put the cookie into my dehydrator on its lowest setting for about 15 minutes to allow the icing to develop a light crust on the surface, which allowed me then to place more icing on top of, or in this case, next to the crusted icing, without having to wait till the icing was fully dry to finish my cookie. If you don't have a dehydrator, you can place the cookie in front of a fan, and depending on your humidity, it will probably need to sit for 30 minutes to an hour. You will know when it's ready when the glossy wet look is gone and it has a little bit more of a matte finish. And if you run your finger lightly over the surface, it feels smooth and almost cool. Well, that probably works best on a cookie that is actually smooth. I actually meant to rough up the surface of the wing to match the rest of the cookie, but I forgot. I probably forgot to mention this for the pink, but I did actually use two different pinks. a lighter and a darker of the same mix of colors. It may seem odd that I added red to both the pink and green icings, but this helps in a couple of different ways. Before I made the pink, I read that you can use blue or green to tone down the bubble gumminess of the color. And since I was going to use green anyway, it seemed pretty obvious which I should use. And I have heard that you can add a little cohesion to your color set if you add like a pea-sized bit of each color of your icing to each other, meaning finished pink into finished green and vice versa. Well, instead of that, because I used red and green in both of the colors, I just left it. And to my eyes, it seems to have brought that cohesion effect. Allowing the cookie to form its light crust also allowed that seam effect in the middle of this leaf. Unfortunately, here shaking the leaf was a little out of the question because shaking a lightly crusted cookie just causes cracking. So as best I could, I smoothed out the icing with my scribe. I can still see a little of my marker on the surface too. Practice makes progress. For this beige icing, I apologize, I do not know exactly what colors went into making it. I started out with some icing from my freezer, which was actually left over from when I made cookies with a friend at her house, and she made the original icing. I do know that I added a little mocha brown to the icing because originally the icing was used for ice cream cones and was a little more yellow. It seems all of my icing was a little on the thick side, so I picked up the cookie and this time with a good grip on it, I shook it to settle the icing and only a little of my icing fell over the edge. Then I popped a couple of bubbles and voila! Not my finest work, but I'm a work in progress. For the writing I did here, I used a soft peak piping consistency, which allowed my icing to stay put and not melt down like it would have if I had attempted to use the flood icing. Now, admittedly, I have spent zero time trying to figure out how to appropriately write on cookies. That is a goal for down the road. But platters like these definitely need some writing in the center, so this is what we wound up with. I'm actually quite happy with the way this platter turned out.
Next time on Kuny's Cookie Chronicles.
In this episode, we shop for a new cookie cutter design, I learn how to use our 3D printer, experiment with my no-spread cookie dough recipe, and bake on my new Chua cookie mats. Join us as we show you how we did it.